Good morning, everyone. It is 10:05 on Tuesday, January 28th, and called to order a special workshop of the Economic Opportunity Advisory Board. Thank you all for participating both in person and online. We will begin with introductions. Jasmine, would you start, please?
So I know I said I could hear you before, but I can barely hear you.
Okay.
But I think you said to introduce myself. Okay, I'm Jasmine Duncan, a member of this board and the mayor of Castle Valley.
And Jasmine, is this better for hearing?
You just spoke up, it sounded like, yeah.
Okay.
Any better now?
Yeah, that's better on my end as well. It was pretty, I couldn't even hear that we were beginning the meeting, so thank you.
All right.
We're better now. Okay, Corey.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. I'm Corey Shirtliff, City Moab Community Development Director.
Wonderful. Glad you're with us. And around the table, we'll just go in order, starting with Ben.
Howdy. Ben Alter, Assistant Economic Development Director today. I suppose I'll be representing our department today because Director Ben Fredgill is unavailable today, unfortunately. So non-voting member.
My name is Mark Tanner. I'm the new Commission Administrator, Grand County.
Melody McCandless, a new commissioner in Grand County.
Ashley Kornblatt, voting member of the board, but representing the chamber also today as Randy as well.
Elisa Jeffers, voting member, community at large.
Christian Olson, I'm Senior Associate Vice President with Utah State University.
Wonderful.
Oh, Rob Walker, Acting Executive Director of Moab Community Child Care, just a member of the public.
Sarah Barstow, I'm the Business Advising Manager for the Women's Business Center of Utah. Came to see about being on this board.
Wonderful.
Chris Wilson, Private Sector Member of the board.
Forrest Rogers, member of the public.
Quinn Hall, Grand County Administrator's Office.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all for being here and accommodating this special workshop. We've had some ups and downs over the last couple of months in terms of one of our core tasks, which is helping the community secure rural county grants through the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity. We'll be spending some time discussing that as we move through the meeting. We also have, like Sarah, we have several people interested, very capable people interested in becoming members of the advisory board. We will move immediately to those interviews once we get through any records or reports of conflicts of interest, disclosures, or ex parte communication. Citizens to be heard, we are they, and no presentations. First of all, as we prepare for the interviews, I just want to acknowledge Ashley's work with and for the chamber as they go through a significant leadership transition, serving both as a board chair and interim director of the chamber.
Well, I have an interim director, but yes, there's a lot to do.
Okay.
Thank you.
You have a lot to do,
yeah.
And we remain committed to helping the chamber, supporting the chamber in its efforts to assist the Moab, Grand County, and the businesses that will benefit from the services you provide.
Yeah, thank you so much. And we're working on a bunch of really economic development initiatives, so moving beyond just business training. So more news on that as the plot begins.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Sarah,
Shall I?
would you join us at the
Where
table?
to sit?
And while you're doing that, I'll ask Melissa if you would ask the first two questions.
Perfect.
And Chris, the second two questions, numbers 3 and 4. And Ashley, would you ask the final question, number 5?
Perfect. Sarah, please introduce yourself, what brought you to Moab, and which community activities you're involved in.
Okay, Sarah Barstow, been here since '97, almost a local. What community activities am I involved in? Personally, little things like flood cleanup, weed cleanup at anonymous bike parks, and trail building for bike system. Nothing that's too easy with a little kid in tow. Business-wise, I had a business for almost 17 years here downtown. I did a lot for the community through that, a lot of donations, monetary gifts. I did discounts for locals, did good grades discounts for the kids here. What else? I'm raising two good kind humans. One's already left out of here. But that's probably it. Oh, and how did I get here? I was living in another tourist town post-college on the East Coast and met someone who knew about Moab, wanted to be a river guide, and wanted to move here. I didn't know anything about Utah. I'm pretty sure I said something like, why would I want to move to Utah? And then I got here, and except for 10 months, I've been here since February of '97.
What do you think are Grand County's greatest assets and attributes?
Definitely the natural beauty, public lands, the access to do a million different things. I have traveled and lived in a lot of beautiful places, and Moab is hands down the most exceptional. And then the community here. Anyone who knows me well knows that I have threatened to leave in the past. And it's the combination of those two things that keeps me here. I think you have a lot of people that choose to be here, and you get a really kind of tight community. Of course, there's always going to be fighting about something, but every community has that. But just, a really amazing group of people I don't think I could recreate anywhere else.
Thanks. What do you think are Grand County's greatest challenges?
Unfortunately, that list is longer. Housing, just like the overall cost of living, prices, wages. I think we lose a lot of professionals coming here to work in the schools or the police force, even the SBDC, and they maybe get excited about the job, look at housing, turn it down because they can't afford to live here. Same with businesses. The barrier to entry, especially if you need a business downtown, is so high. I don't think running a successful business, I wouldn't think that I could do it now, looking at just like what it would cost to do that. We've got a highway going through downtown, which makes it an unenjoyable experience for locals and residents. Schools are failing, at least the one that my kid is in. And I think just the boom in tourism in the past decade has decreased the quality of life for some locals, but also for tourists. When I had my shop, I talked to tourists, day in, day out, all the time. And quite a few of them told me that they would not be coming back to Moab because the experience had changed so much, having been there, in years prior, and then just the way it changed.
Thank you. What professional experience and perspective do you bring to it?
I worked downtown for 20 years, talking to locals, talking to tourists, day in, day out, with my own shop and with other businesses downtown. Professionally, I work directly with businesses in and outside of Moab, day in, day out. I go around, we have something with the Women's Business Center called Out and About, where we go and promote women-owned businesses, but local businesses in our area. We've been doing that for 2 years. I never run out of women business owners in Moab to promote. I have developed curriculum and co-teach an intro to business class through my work. We're also working on developing curriculum, working closely with lenders that's specific to getting people capital ready. So we're not going to guarantee you can get a loan, but we're going to help you with your business plan and your financials and set you up for success. We also just got grant funding for a childcare specific kind of a business. So we're trying to hire someone who will run that programming. So I do a lot excuse me, through my business, working with businesses in Moab, but also statewide. So I work remotely. I work with clients all over the state, so I have kind of an idea what's happening statewide. We are actually employees of the Salt Lake Chamber. They house about 10 nonprofits. So I get all the information, I'll call it the legislative information coming out of the state. Also like what's happening with my clients statewide, not just in Moab. What's happening with the governor's office. So that's probably just of it.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, would you be able, and are you willing to participate in the meetings as they are held?
Yes, and thank you for letting me come to this one. Tomorrow when you have your normal meeting, I'm going to meet Price at a business roadshow for research partners.
Thank you. Sarah, thank you.
Retreat back.
You're welcome to stay there.
Can I stay for a little bit too?
Absolutely.
I don't have a client for a while.
Absolutely, as long as it doesn't change your mind about wanting to be a member of this group.
We'll see. I'll let you know.
You mentioned SBDCs and.
They just hired someone.
Yes, Christian, will you share the good news of your hire?
Yeah, we finally got somebody hired. I think that's the really good news, right? It was quite a journey, quite a process. We actually had a really solid candidate pool, and took some time to narrow it down. We interviewed about 4 different folks, and ultimately decided on Todd Thompson. Todd, as many of you may know, is the former principal here at Grand High, and what we didn't know is the extensive experience that Todd had in owning his own business, and was currently doing some consulting on some other businesses, helping them to try to get some things figured out. In fact, when he called, he was on a consulting trip up to Idaho, helping a company secure a $250,000 contract with the National Laboratory up there. And those of you that know Todd, he's a very likable guy. He's an incredibly hard worker. He's fluent in Spanish, which is going to be an asset as well. He currently works with the Hispanic community in Moab, helping them with a variety of items, both related to business and other personal things that they needs that he can help support. And so he's up and running. We've got him in the office up on the campus. I know he was doing a lot of training last week, and I haven't touched base with him this morning, but I think he's good. I'm excited. He's a workhorse. He's going to be great.
I've already been emailing with him.
Have you?
And I'll meet him at Moab, that same roadshow. I'm going to be in Vernal today, I'll be in Price tomorrow, and then I'll be in Moab.
Okay.
So we've been chatting, so I look forward to meeting him.
Yeah, he's great.
Oh, I forgot to mention, I'm on the WABI board, so I have a little board experience.
He was the principal when my son was in the high school, and I couldn't be more excited.
Yeah.
Like, he is really community-minded, really, and I think that with the opportunities we have on the sort of youth to good jobs in Moab track that we're trying to get established, he's gonna be the right person. It's gonna be great, through USU courses and starting to encourage and kind of connect some dots on that front. That's amazing. Yay.
And faculty and administration at the high school have the highest of regard for him.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Yeah, he did a lot of good things at the high school in his time.
Agreed. Amazing.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
I couldn't be more surprised, but that's so great.
Yeah, we were pleasantly surprised too. So,
Having sat on a lot of those search committees in universities, sometimes the committee doesn't know what it really wants until that person is sitting right in front of them.
right.
And so that's wonderful. The next part of our workshop is really focusing on resolving the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunities decision or encouragement or directive to redeploy the funds that had been awarded to the chamber. That was the 63,500 through the Rural County Grant Program. Given the transitions that have occurred at the chamber, they have sent the clear message that we should and have the license to go ahead and reallocate those funds. Have I said that correctly?
Absolutely.
Okay. So there has been some discussion about the city, the remaining costs of, Corey, I'm addressing the city here. There has been some discussion about the city's dispersed parking project and whether there are remaining costs that might be considered for the Rural County Grant Program. Now, we know that the city's received an opportunities grant, which has really jump-started the dispersed parking project. So could you give us a quick update on the status there?
Sure, thank you. My understanding, and then Ben has been aiding in this coordination. We're communicating with the city engineer to assess where we're at in that process and where we are at with completion. I don't have an update as to where the numbers are finally at to absorb that additional funding. I think we're encouraged by that and looking for that, but I don't think we have a firm number that we could accept at this time.
Sure.
Ben, and you've been in coordination with Mark directly, I believe. Is there any additional response that you've gotten outside of maybe my communication?
And for clarification, you're speaking about, we have a Mark in the room here, but we're talking about Mark at the city, right?
Correct. Mark Jola, Saint City Engineer.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, I have not heard anything additionally from him or Alexi, so
Okay.
we're on the same page.
Okay.
Yeah, and also just for clarification to the board, so this and the Mo Community Child Care proposal are both on the agenda because we were directed through the governor's office to consider these as possible avenues for reallocating the remainder of the chamber funds. We also are welcoming the board to discuss other proposals during this time. It was decided that we wouldn't be asking for proposals because the turnaround time would be kind of quick. The process would probably prove inequitable. So we're hoping for the proposals to be board generated. But these were two proposals we were directed to consider, but it's ultimately up to this board what recommendation they'd like to forward to the commission.
And we're under a tight time frame because this money has to be spent by June 30th, correct? Or it can be encumbered for future use?
We've been given some different ideas about encumbering, and I think that the state would prefer that that be a last resort. Okay. My understanding also is that I believe the state understands that based on our timeline, the metrics for success in June will be a lot of this project is still in progress, but I think that they certainly want to see the funds actually dispersed and get going as soon as possible. So I think that's the real time pressure, if there's anything, is to just get these funds in the hands of the project recipients. When it comes time to report in June, we'll be partnering with the recipients to prove that the projects are in good places.
And so our time, Melissa?
No, just point of clarification. Are the Moab Community Child Care funds being held while this is resolved, or did they get their funding?
No funds have made it to Grand County, so Mo Community Child Care has not received their funding yet. Yeah.
I don't know if anyone can answer this question right now, but I'm going to put it out there anyway, because I guess if there is any additional information that can be shared about why the chamber was taken off the table, it would be helpful as we make decisions about future projects to consider. So I don't know if there's anything else besides what you've already stated for us that can be shared there. But I mean, I just say it in the sense of, if we're deciding on, different potential projects, understanding whether it's timeline issues, political issues, just the chamber decided not to take it, things like that might help us in making a good decision about how to quickly and effectively get all these funds to Grand County and to
Mark,
organizations.
is that a question for you?
My understanding is the issue with the chamber receiving those funds is because they do not have a permanent executive director at this time.
Right.
That's my understanding.
That was an unexpected health-related thing that happened. So I don't know if we can learn from that really, because it's pretty unusual that something would happen to an organization that suddenly the leadership is gone.
Sure.
So I don't know that we can learn from it, but there, I think there were various attempts to kind of fix it or postpone and whatnot. But we're happy with the pause for the moment because we've got plenty to do.
Yeah.
And so I think it's all working out fine in the end. We don't, we'll be able to reapply later and look at different ways to do it. And we're also building in some systems so that if you had that transition, it wouldn't be quite so dramatic. But for any small organization, it's hard when you lose your key staffer.
Sure. And the one thing I'll add is that we reached out to the governor's office originally to communicate that we were unsure if the chamber was in the position to take the project. And we spoke to them about what flexibility there may or may not be in the project. So we're the ones who originally reached out and said, we're working with the chamber, we're confident in their partnership, but there is this development.
Okay, thank you.
So let's return to the discussion about the Moab Community Child Care. And especially for the benefit of Mark, Melody, and Sarah, Rob, would you speak to the current award that you have but have not yet received funding? And then this idea of taking on some additional responsibility through the course of 2025.
Sure. Yeah, so we have maybe a 2-page proposal that you guys have probably seen. Ben's probably sent it over to you with the details, the award, which I think is $136,500. And it's a few different buckets on that. The first bucket is workforce development and training for the child care workers. Of that, a lot of that is our training expenses. Child care workers are required to do at least 20 hours a year, and we bump that up. We let them do at least 30. We could potentially do more. We get more funding for that. We pay them for all that training time. We also encourage them to get professional development through things like the Child Development Associate degree, the CDA. We have two people in that program right now, and we pay them a portion of their hours. So it's 120 extra hours of study. So we give them $10 an hour, $1,250 to get that. That allows them to then run a center in the future. Oh yeah, thanks for this. Yeah, so here's our, and then we also do a small amount of backup coverage. This was something that we did more in the past, but after talking with Colette, it sounded like we should, de-emphasize that program because that's a program that's just going to require ongoing support, and there's no real path to that being like cost neutral. That's where when child care centers, a provider is sick at a homes and daycare center, that our staff will come in and help them and keep it open. The main chunk of the budget with the portion that we could potentially increase, I think that fits in well from talking with people in the past, was the new classroom around at our infant center location. So I guess we might get to there briefly. The other things were materials for expansion of about $11,000. So we currently operate 2 child care centers, both that are provided with free rent at existing locations, existing church locations around town, one at the Grace Lutheran, one at the Moab Community Church. The Grace Lutheran Church is a unique partnership in that the church was built in 1961. I think it's it's a building that has just been owned wholly by this local group that has shrunk significantly to now where it's really just one main family that lives out in LaSalle, and we definitely feel like we're there more than they're there for sure. They all have service maybe once or twice a month, and we take care of the upkeep of the church. The ground's a great location right across from the big LDS church. It's a half-acre lot, and a quarter acre of that is just dirt parking lot that would have been for like higher church membership and so forth. So we identified this as a possible place to expand. The Lutheran church we operate in is a great relationship because, like I said, I think that they want us there more than, there's no way we would kind of be kicked out of that situation because we're taking care of the building. They're really happy with us. They'll sign whatever contract we want in terms of ensuring that we're not just going to be giving them the money and they're going to have this new building. It's a very small group, like I said. We're also in the community church of Moab. That's a real thriving church, and we have a very small space in that church. And so our long-term relationship there, or likelihood that we'll be there in 10 years, is certainly uncertain. And we've grown our amount of kids we serve by about 10 kids last year. I think that's kind of what we'll be. So I think right now we serve about 30 a day. We'll probably be about 50 to 60 a day as kids age into that program. So we have to think about kind of where we're going to be for expansion. We have a cool opportunity right now, which I think will finalize soon, to take over Synergy's childcare location out in Spanish Valley. That was something that we helped start 2.5, 3 years ago. We found a provider for them and a home daycare provider to take that center over. They've been running that. A lot of things in childcare is extremely difficult to provide as a service, as you can imagine. There's a lot of hours involved, a lot of regulation, and they haven't been able. And also, too, we're a nonprofit, so childcare really only works as a luxury service or as a subsidized nonprofit. I'm working hard to try to make it as little subsidized as possible, and as we blend in older kids with kind of like a higher ratio of kids to parents, to teachers, we could make that happen. But long story short is there were some subsidies that were happening with COVID that have passed. So that provider and that relationship, we're going to take that over and employ them most likely. So that'll give us an opportunity to expand there. We'll need to purchase a bunch of equipment for that, which we would potentially use in the future. I imagine that'll be like $20,000. We try to wrap this up. I apologize. I didn't really expect that I'd be presenting something necessarily, but so we're excited that near term, we have this kind of turnkey facility that we can then expand to. There's only about, give or take 6 kids there right now, and that could hold easily 20. So that gives us great line of sight to expand and be able to not have to turn people away. Wowever, that's Synergy's a growing business. They pay rent on that facility. That arrangement would be a rent-free situation for us, which is would be very costly for Synergy. We're very excited for that, but we wouldn't expect that would be a long-term thing for us for 5 or 10 years. I imagine they'll want to repurpose that to office space at some point in the future, perhaps, or we certainly have to protect against that possibility. So I see that the best option, and the initial idea of this infrastructure, this proposal was done way before we talked with Synergy. This was from August of last year. My thought would be that we expand it to there, and then we start building an expansion at the Lutheran site. The Lutheran site is a commercial zoned, we talked with the city planning and can go up to 30 feet there. It's 10,000 square feet. There's plenty of room for parking. We don't really have much parking because people just drop their kids off. So we'd be excited to build a facility there. Depending if we had more money, we also could do more of a capital campaign. The initial thought was more of in August. The initial impetus for this grant was, oh crap, we're gonna run out of space. So let's bring in a little classroom. We could do this for $100,000. It's not ideal amount of money, but we can make this work and raise a little bit of money and have an extra 10 kids in that space. Co-locating with our existing facility makes a ton of sense, of course, for a lot of reasons. Kids take naps for an hour and a half, 2 hours. You can have monitors. You can move people over for staffing efficiency and so forth. You only need to have one kitchen and so forth. This is a project that is definitely part of our future planning. So if we were able to be allocated more money, we could certainly increase the size of that facility. We'd love to have a basement, first floor, second floor that could accommodate, some range of 30 to 50 children. And then that would give us, we could then, instead of having these 3 different locations, we could kind of be in one site. And that's convenient for staff, for parents, and then we're in control of our, think about most nonprofits in town, they have a building, they have a facility that's theirs, a YGP or multicultural center or free health clinic or something. So that's definitely in our plan. So we definitely would be able to handle that additional capacity for a new facility. The way I understand it is, what's nice about that is it's not, we'll still have to kind of work on our ongoing expenses, but that's a capital cost that most of the grant would go towards that. And then the rest, smaller portion, is workforce development. We're also helping another unlicensed preschool with some renovations to help get them licensed, which is Sago Lily, which is an awesome program, and they've done great stuff with just $5,000 for fence, gates, and kitchen renovations. Pardon me, I didn't realize that at the beginning of your presentation. I was a little long-winded.
That's okay.
Bottom line, our question really is, how much, you obviously have lots of uses of this grant, but mainly what you're talking about is physical capacity,
Yes.
and that's your goal. I mean,
Yes.
that's what you'd be able to move this towards.
Yes. Yeah, the way I understand it, I mean, so we have different needs as an organization. One of our needs is, is our ongoing operating cash flow. Is that childcare, like I said, it's sort of this luxury good. It works when it's, $2,000 a month. It doesn't work great when it's $1,000 a month. We have a 4-to-1 ratio right now. But the way I understand this kind of grant and the current funding for childcare, unlike say K through 12, it's not like an ongoing thing. I would love there to be funding to provide, ongoing tuition assistance for families in Grant County that are like missing middle kind of income levels. But that's not what we could use this for from talking with the state
This
in the
grant
past.
program, it doesn't
Yeah,
really
yeah.
provide
So,
that, but it
yeah.
does provide
Correct.
physical.
Yeah, so that's, because I was kind of giving the roundabout answer.
Yeah.
That's one of our main needs, which we're doing other things for. This would cover the visibility of the future. So we're not kind of just sort of, squatting in these other people's locations and hoping that, they keep us there.
Well, and that's the
Yeah,
spirit of
building
these
of our own.
grants, is to
Right.
move the project to the next level, but not necessarily to provide ongoing funding.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So Rod, just clarify in my head. So assuming we were to recommend the additional 63.5 for childcare, you would use that primarily to complete the work on the new classroom?
Yeah, so, I'd like to talk about the timeline for that, because like I said, near term, the way I think about our timeline is, we would be taking over this energy location end of May, end of the school year, because we have some kids in part-time preschool programs in our existing facility. It makes sense to do that timeline. So we take that over, say, June 1st. And then we'd be purchasing equipment on that site, which would perhaps be $20,000, which would be equipment that we could use if we had a new facility. For instance, if we built this facility, we'll have to buy cribs and so forth, and cots and playgrounds. So that equipment can move with us. That'd be like the near-term cash flow that we'd have, like to be able to report to the state in June. We can do some preliminary site planning and things like that, some architecture work. We wouldn't have a big time crunch necessarily. I'm assuming, unless of course we couldn't come to a deal with Synergy. I'm sure we will. I know that we're really close. We talk a lot about it. Then we would start the other project, which we can talk about the timeline of that, but ideally I wouldn't like to rush that and do that at the same time, because we're a small organization. We don't have much administrative support. A project like that size, I'm sure from the day you start it to the day you finish it is probably a year long. But there'd be some initial steps we'd want to be taking around, like planning and so forth on that. We wouldn't have the dire need of like, we need this open in 6 months. We'd be in a great position. What we found is that, each month we have usually our enrollment grows by about 1 kid. Yeah. We have when there's 100 kids born a year here in Moab, and a chunk of those come to us. We're really the only infant center in town, and they kind of stay with us as they get older.
But but I don't think the grant, this is one of the challenges with these grants. They have certain timeframes for spending the money and reporting on it, but
could accelerate.
But it doesn't seem like, it seems like there would be a way, like there's nothing that you're saying is indicating that you couldn't spend it and report on it as required by the grant. Like if one of these deals doesn't come together, you're gonna find another one. Like if that's the point of it, is to grow your capacity, you're gonna find a way to spend this money to do that, whether it's planning, whether it's whatever it is. I guess that's the question. Does this project fit the parameters of this grant?
with the new timeframe.
Yeah, is there any, because what we don't want to
Can
do is get in another kerfuffle.
Because it sounds like he
I
already
think we
has
could
the 106,000 that he's gonna spend on infrastructure, because you've already been given a grant. Well, it hasn't been dispersed yet, but it's been promised to you, but you haven't started spending that money yet.
And we initially, yeah,
So this would
and
be
that
an
amount was
additional-
not quite, I remember we were talking about it. I didn't want to be too greedy, but it is a building. Like, this is not a lot of money. 100,000 is not a lot to like build a
Yeah, I
structure.
remember during our initial conversations, Rob mentioned that
We could bring
he was
in
gonna
other funds.
He was gonna struggle to build a building with the amount of money that we ultimately.
We'll be bringing in other
gave
funds
him.
to build with this, for sure. But this will,
So this could also just basically cover that same
The
expansion
actual cost,
infrastructure,
yes.
as well as some other cots, beds, cribs, things like that.
Right.
yeah, I think the only incremental difference for this would just be the size of the building that we could dream to build. Initially, it was sort of like, obviously, we could try to bring in a manufactured residential unit, try to get an exemption from the rules and so forth, but that's not as exciting and not as, it's not as inspiring up to have a building like that versus to, build a nice structure that's a stick built. But to the timeline question, I'd say, yeah, I would love not to have to like rush to do this super quickly and take our time with it, because that's our needs, but we could certainly, this is a lot of money, so we're willing to certainly bend over and put backwards and try to do we could certainly start the project and make progress. And my thought was that there'd be at least 12 months from when the time is dispersed to spend it, and then maybe there could be like an extension a little longer from that, but we could probably still do that if that was an important requirement that needed to happen. I would want to say yes to that and not say no. We'll just make it work. And then depending on how much funding we get, and we'll reach out to a few other donors, then we can decide whether it makes sense to how big of a structure to build, whether there's a basement, a first floor, a second floor. I'd love to have something that could be somewhat modular where we could build onto it over time. I don't want to, we wouldn't be like holding it, doing nothing with it, that's for sure.
Right.
So,
Is there, do you want to ask?
well, is that,
And
so as
clarification.
far as you know about the grant reporting requirements, and then this all seems to fit, because we already went through this once for his first grant, so we know that even if it isn't all spent at once or whatever, that this grant will accommodate that schedule.
Yeah, I'm hesitant to really hang my hat on anything right now without checking with the state. But my understanding here is that I think the expectation that the funds will be totally spent in the next 5 months and everything will be wrapped up in a bow is not realistic and off
Right.
the table. So showing that the funds are dedicated to a project that is underway and has responsible people at the helm, I think is the most important thing. MCC has been a recipient before, and their aspect of this proposal was not in question originally.
Right.
So I don't see an expansion of the ask being any issue.
And I would just add to all of that, that one of the things, having been a recipient of these grants before, is just doing everything we can at the onset to spell out the reporting requirements, so that we aren't scrambling at the last minute to report that the grant recipient knows exactly what the reporting requirements are, that when they get it, and that way it's all clear. And we've said, here's what the state's gonna want from you, and this is the date they're gonna want it, and then it'll be a little smoother.
And all of that, we've had great feedback from the commission recently and previously on more robust reporting. And so that has been, and I've shared a draft with Rob of what his grant contract would look like. And that spells out the reporting requirements very clearly. I'm glad to circulate that with this board afterwards. We just worked through it with legal. So it's just about ready to go as soon as the funds come in. But it spells out all kinds of different economic indicators we're looking at and tracking every little dollar and understanding how that's helping the project.
Well, I think that's a key thing, because it is really difficult if you're like suddenly supposed to measure something that you weren't aware of that you're supposed to be measuring. So,
Chris?
Why don't you go ahead first?
I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, when we finish the conversation about community childcare, I'd like to present another great idea.
Exactly, yeah, the same.
See?
Yeah.
And I was asked by Ben to float some ideas as well. So I will let the board go and then I will get back.
Okay. Christian, do you have a question?
Yeah, Rob,
Yeah.
Rob, I'm kind of coming into this as the new guy, so sorry if I ask some
No worries.
naive questions, but it sounds like what you're saying is with the $100,000+ and then this additional is to use it as seed money to attract other funders to help fund the construction of additional space?
No, I mean, kind of maybe. I would say like, we don't need, like, we can move forward with this. We have some additional funders. We can add some money to this. We can make this work with even less money with the current allocation we have. It just would make sense to, the process will take a while. We can think about what we should size that at, because, we do have that one area. So it makes sense to say, what should our scope be? If we have, let's say, in this case, potentially 160,000 allocated to it, could we raise another 100 very quickly from existing donors? Like, maybe, but that won't impact. That'll just reduce how big of a building we build.
I got you.
You wouldn't like use that as like a big must-have.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Melody?
So I was just thinking about other things in the community. I think this is great and it's awesome, but there's also like Beacon After School Club is, in a deficit this year. They had grants for 5 years and they don't have the money. I think they're $150,000 short for their program this year, and they're free. They, when my kids were in elementary school, it was a cost program, but now it's free to all kids that sign up, and then that's at 2 hours after school from like 3 to 5. That kids are, so different level than what the community childcare is, handling. So that's an idea, as well as the Grand Area Mentoring. They always could use money, and for every $2,000 they get, that trains a new mentor, and for every mentor that they have amazing reporting that comes back and shows how effective that program is. So those are just 2 other options to throw out there that helps our community.
Yeah.
Ideas.
Can I follow up on Brittany, because Beacon was what I wanted to talk about also. Sorry, Jesse.
Yeah.
Apologies. Yeah, so I had a conversation with Sandra, the director, in the last few days, just because I had seen, probably a lot of people have seen, there's a newspaper article about the sort of funding gap that Beacon's facing right now. And yeah, so just to put that, to explain that. So yeah, we all know what Beacon is. Beacon, along with like after school programs across the entire country, have faced a reduction in federal funding over the last year or so. Most programs in the country have had to either reduce what they're offering as a result of that, or had to close doors, even some of them. And Beacon is a part of that number who have had to. So they don't have Fridays anymore right now as a result of that loss of funding. And furthermore, they're sort of facing this period where, with that gap, and who knows what does or doesn't happen with the future of that federal funding, they're looking to diversify their funding and sort of like reconstitute it so that they're back. I mean, they have a 20-something year time that they've been in Moab working, right? They've been around for a long time, but with this reduction in federal funding, they're looking to diversify their funding streams. And so what this grant could potentially do for them is help sort of fill in that gap, make sure that they don't have to like drastically reduce coverage, their programming during this time period while they're diversifying funding, looking at different foundation funding, as well as improving their like private contributions. And so I just asked Sandra a little bit about like what could you do? What are your needs specifically, and what could you do with this amount of money, more or less, if there were, if this was something we decided to consider here. And I mean, her biggest need, just like so many organizations, is really staffing. That's their biggest expense. And that would be where they'd love to apply the bulk of the funding. There's also sort of like other ways to think about it, depending on how much we want to and how much we might get some pushback from the state about just straight supporting staffing. Some things that could get added in, like they're already looking at adding financial literacy into their curriculum in the coming year. I feel like that's a cool project. It also relates very directly to economic development. They've done some, especially with like they house within them the Native American Club, and they did like college visits last year with them. That's something they could do a little bit more of, a sort of like post-grad exploration, like career pathways, working to, so they're putting on actually like a post-grad fair this coming week. It's the kind of thing they could do more of with a little bit of additional funding. So, Yeah, and another thing is like teacher stipends. They they already work with like a ceramics teacher to have an open studio time after school. So they pay basically the teacher a little bit of a stipend to keep that classroom open, and they could offer more of those kinds of programs, keeping teachers on board to strengthen some of their curriculum and just like improve offerings over time. There's maybe a few other things that they could do with it, but I mean, I think that, yeah, the gist of it is that like they could handle this kind of money. They could put it in a few different buckets depending on where we directed them. And it would go a long way to, really making sure that students in Moab have this like access to, I think of it in like the connections to economic development in like two different baskets. The first is sort of for the younger kids. And I mean, it's kind of like childcare in the way that it creates an economic benefit. It allows the parents to continue to work during that time, or to, keep the job that they have, that it goes during, after school hours. And so there's that piece of it that's pretty important. And just like developmentally, it's important. We know there's all these studies that show that developmentally it helps kids later on get through school and graduate, things like that. But in addition to that, then for some of the older kids, there's these sort of very tangible aspects of how it connects to what their career pathway looks like right after graduation. And that's things like, they have an entrepreneurship club where kids are explicitly exploring career pathways, this post-grad fair and college visits, things like that, that sort of lean in the direction of like workforce training, or like setting people up for what that next step post-high school looks like for them, along with just keeping them engaged and getting them to the graduation finish line, which in itself is important to economic development, although maybe has a more educational sort of focus to it. So anyway, just want to throw that out there.
You mentioned Beacon as well.
Yeah.
My recollection is that we have some criteria that we have to work around to fund a program that's affiliated with the schools. So to consider Beacon, we most likely would have to make the award go to the foundation, to the Grand Schools Foundation. And then I assume you then have a way to redistribute that to programs.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm on the chair of the Grant County Education Foundation as well, but that's not I can't vote on this anyways, and I don't know if I'd recuse myself if I was a commissioner. I'll find that out. But anyways, so yeah, the money could come to the foundation at any point in time, and we could distribute it to Beacon, and that way it wouldn't have to go to the school district. Because I know a lot of people don't want to donate money specifically to the Grant County School District. They want it to go to where they want it to, so we tend to be a funnel a lot. So that, if that was the way it needed to go, I mean, the foundation would be happy to make that happen. We just did I think Beacon was the recipient for the clay artisan fundraiser that happened, during the folk festival, and the same thing. So that money like funnels to us because we have a 501c3. So we're always helpful to those groups. But I mean, my kids have gone to Beacon. My daughter uses the ceramics time frame to go finish her projects. I think it's a great program, and I think a lot of our community benefits from that in both ways. The economic way of keeping the people at work so they don't have to go home and get their kids, and also just expanding our kids' horizons. Because even in elementary school, they have different programs for those kids to really learn what are going to be their desires and paths in the future.
70% of kids in Grant County schools have at some point in time are currently or at some point in time have been serviced by the Beacon programs. It's a huge percentage of kids in our whole school district that they're serving.
And the topics that they are interested in pursuing are important because the legislature has defunded the program that gives Grand County and other rural high schools a college advisor. Those have been funded by Brian. Those have been funded by the legislature in a project managed by the University of Utah. And now the funding for that has been cut so that after this year, there won't be a college advisor at the high school. So the kind of subjects that Beacon is looking at are really important. So Ben, you had some ideas, some suggestions?
Yeah, not much different from what we've already said. And I meant to start this meeting, but I just want to say thank you to the board. We're going to meet 3 times this month. Your time is not lost on us, so thank you for all that you're providing for our department, for the county. So in our department, we discussed 3 potential recipient organizations. We were actually talking to them back last fall, and we thought maybe there'd be funds in our normal county budget. That didn't pan out this year, but we still think they're strong partners, and part of that is because they already have programs going on. 2 of them have already been mentioned: Grand Area Mentoring and Beacon After Schools. I think especially with the funding shortfall that Beacon is seeing, I think that that's a very salient opportunity. I don't think that Beacon ranks over Grand Area Mentoring empirically. I think they both have immense benefits, but off the top of my head, something that Beacon provides that we talked about is not just the benefit for students, but also allowing those working parents to stay at work. This aligns with our strategic plan goals in numerous ways, talking about intergenerational poverty and also talking about helping parents stay at work. So I think that Beacon would probably be a great match. And also, in the absence at this point in time of proposals, the clearer the need, the easier it will be for us to turn this around. Beacon's got a demonstrated need. Grand Area Mentoring did present to the commission last year, and the commission, I think, looked at them quite favorably and was unable to carve out funds in the budget this year, but I know that that relationship exists. Grand Area Mentoring, I know that they've had some trouble recruiting, and I think that they've spoke to how funds would enable them to recruit better, in part because they do cover many, if not all, the activities that their mentors take their mentees on, and that's an integral part of the program. The third thing I wanted to call to attention is Science to Moab School to Science program. This is a program in which students are paired with local science organizations at the state and federal level, or just with nonprofits, different research organizations. Those high schoolers have the opportunity to participate in internships and shadowing throughout high school, and then hopefully that informs their postgraduate decision-making. I know that the School to Science Moab has been extremely successful, and the last time I spoke to them, I think one of the things that they were working on is how do we quantify this success? It's evidently kind of tough to get in touch with students once they go off to college, but the silver lining is they're going to college. And so I think that funding for that program, if this board were to consider it, when I think about the challenges that nonprofits face, funding School to Science to be able to quantify their success better would have a sustainable aspect, because when you can quantify your success, you become more eligible, more competitive for grants in the future. So I know that they have a very successful program, and I think they're trying to bolster their narrative and understand how does that translate to student success post-high school. Those are the 3 organizations that we wanted to discuss. I also know that Ben is deeply dedicated to supporting the different food bank programs in our area, and thought that the board could consider that. Both the church and the Grand County Food Bank are both potential recipients. Where I sit right now, I don't feel as confident as I do with the other organizations we've talked about, saying that that would be a green light on this application. I'd have to do a little bit more research, but I'm going to put forward whatever the board votes on. So those were what I wanted to plug for the county, and I'm glad to take any questions. I am not subject matter on any of those programs, and like I said in the beginning, unfortunately, we decided not to take any proposals just to make this a fair process. And so I don't want to misrepresent those programs, but having met with them in the fall, that's kind of what I can speak to, is their current successes and what they may look to use our funding for if we were to award it.
It appears that we have 2 leading projects that we could take a look at and compare for readiness, ability to complete within the time frame allotted, and potential future buildups for additional funding and support. So I'm going to give everybody 15 seconds to think about.
A couple that I would like to throw in the
Add them.
pile.
Jump in, interrupt.
But if you want to do that before moving on, I don't want to disrupt the process.
We're here to surface ideas, possibilities.
Okay, very cool. Putting a pen in Beacon, just really quickly, as you guys were talking, with my revenue and fundraising hat on, I have so many ideas with Beacon. So if there's someone to talk to,
I'll get you her number.
yeah, please.
They've already reached out about the entrepreneurship club to the chamber. So that's also in this ecosystem of one of our economic development initiatives that we're working on is convening all the players in that youth piece.
Okay, then I want to talk, because with my funding cap on it ignited immediately, I've got 3 concrete things that we could pursue. So just given the parameters that we have, obviously they're not optimal suggestions or recommendations or thoughts, but we're dealing with constraints of, we've got a time constraint, we've got a finite budget constraint, and then we have this just quick turnaround time. So as I was putting it through the filters of what are some strategic things that we've been talking about exploring, how can we tackle challenges that we might be able to use this to solve a few different issues at one time, I came up with just a handful of quick recommendations. One of them is, it's an ongoing discussion of this board that more cooperation, collaboration between the city and the county on an economic development standpoint are really, really important. Because Moab City holds a huge lion's share of the revenue and the taxable revenue that we're getting for the county, but Moab City lives within Grand County. And there just isn't or hasn't been a whole lot of collaboration on projects. So I was thinking about initiatives that could be a test of those relationships and create intentional or craft intentional approaches to kind of build cooperation to start looking at some larger projects. And we've talked a lot about activation space downtown. So our ability to be able to host events, incoming festivals, like all of those things. So one of my suggestions would be a collaborative effort where we grant Moab City funding to explore and develop public-private partnership around a placemaking plan for a downtown activation space for activation and gathering. What that exploration and public-private partnership would include would be identifying those parcels, like what's available for a long-term lease or whatever, working collaboratively together and looking at different options that they could explore. That's one. One would be to grant, and this is coming from feedback from the business community, a really strong push from them, and then also low-hanging fruit with a really good win that would be great for the business community, is to grant the Economic Development Department or the County Administrator Office funding to be able to develop and market a plan for Grand County's businesses to offer health insurance, 401ks, and additional benefits at no cost or low cost to all of our employees. What that would look like is, the Park City Chamber of Commerce has already negotiated plans in place and has great programs. And I know Ben Frederick has said that he has a relationship with that chamber so that they can offer small businesses the opportunity to offer all of their employees benefits, 401ks, insurance rates, at low or no cost to their small businesses. There's a secondary program through I think it's the Travel Council. Who's the Visit Utah Board? Natalie Randall. They've negotiated the same for any hospitality, tourism, or outdoor recreation business. So being able to connect all of those different resources and then be able to advertise, educate our business community so that every business in our community could, if they chose, offer health insurance benefits, 401k benefits, and other benefits at no cost to their employees. So that's another one. And then the third one is to give the EDD or county administrator, or in collaboration with each other, research funding for monetizing our outside investments in our built-in human infrastructure that's focused around additional revenue streams for the county, job creation, and PR. Some examples of that would be, we've talked a lot of times about taking our EMS subject matter expertise, our search and rescue expertise, and monetizing those in the form of offering education and bringing in people for skills training so that we can monetize that really amazing resource. Or, for example, we've got solid waste that's an outsized issue. There are a number of ways that we can monetize that as well. So giving that to those departments to work collaboratively to identify and to move forward or develop a project around that monetization. And then the last one, thankfully, as everyone exhales a sigh of relief, would be giving it to the EDD to research, develop, facilitate, and market some kind of a co-op or a collaborative approach to solve some of the issues from our community businesses around, and this is something that I've heard a lot from our business community recently, We have a lot of people who manufacture something or create something or have to ship something that aren't operations, logistics experts, whatever, right? So we live in a really regionally isolated community. It's really difficult for us to ship things. They're not operations and logistics experts. Could we put some research around what it would be to be able to put together a collective where we negotiate shipping rates collectively as a business community, where we can maybe do some initial research around funding a shipping and operations facility that can be leased, rented, or co-shared, putting a plan together to be able to support that. So those were 4 things that I could think of where, you know, we kind of already know, because we've talked about what the challenges have been over the last year, that we could plug some of these things in and chop some wood to either create better collaboration between the city and the county economically, or, you know, create a plan forward on some things. And I'm looking at this grant, the 65,000, because it's not a substantial grant. It's kind of that seed. Let's do some research and some investigations so that when it's time for the rural opportunity grant, if any of them bear fruit, that's $250,000 worth of fruit now that they could double down and execute on something with. So those are some thoughts.
Wow. I think those are really good. Some of those, the chamber's kind of dancing around in terms of how we can engage in that way on the 401, you know, different ways. But we're not there yet. I guess what worries me right now is that we need, you know, the state has put out this money. We need to really make sure that this, whatever we recommend right now, really fits, and that we aren't asking for exceptions or doing anything funny. Just because, but that being said, I think that a couple of, like, I've only been through one round of grants on this board, but I know that we kind of a little bit struggle to get really solid, you know, applications that that actually truly match the grant. Like, there is a little tail wagging the dog problem going on where if you're having to make up something for an organization to do to match the grant that wasn't really in the organization's core plan for that year, then all of a sudden it gets complicated that way too. So if we don't do any of those that you just mentioned right now, it feels like we should start the work to figure out how those could, because I'm not sure that we can give money to the EEB. I don't know, like there's a couple of things that I'm worried we might trigger that I'm not sure we can. But that doesn't mean that if we have more time that we couldn't figure out a way to solve the problem and structure it kind of like the education board does help us so that we can get money. So I think those are really great, and we should keep those on the table and keep working towards what is a way that we could do those if they don't fit into this kind of last minute situation.
Jasmine, you've been listening intently, and we've had a roundabout but productive conversation about the 65-3 funding, the funds that are available. And I'd be interested in your initial reaction to all that have been discussed, and we'll move towards refining and you know, have a motion for action soon.
Sure. Thanks, Forrest. I'm kind of leaning with Ashley as to Melissa's suggestions. I think there's a lot of good things there that may not be like the time for. Moab Community Childcare, we've continually supported, and I think that the state will accept that. I also really feel like the Beacon program is a valuable program, and I have disclosed before that Zandra is a good friend and also my business partner. So just that being said, I think that program is something that I would support funding if it fits within what the state will accept. So at this time, given the amount of time that we're working with, I feel like either of those programs would get my support. I mean, I have ideas for things in the future. I would love to see us support some kind of apprenticeship programs for trade type of things in the future. It's something I would like to see us pursue. But I think at this time, either the Beacon or the Moab Community Childcare.
So a process question, Ben. We, in order for commission action next Tuesday, we would have to make a decision no later than tomorrow on these two options, correct?
The meeting was called today so we could get an invite today, but that is to get it on the commission for next week.
Okay.
Yes. And I will add that the way I've drafted the letter to the commission is so that this board can put forward rather a list of what it believes are worthy funding causes, prioritize this is what we are most excited about, and also providing some other considerations so that the commission sees what was considered. So I would treat this as sort of a prioritized list of expenditure, and we can elaborate on all of those. It won't just be a list. We'll have some detail to it. I'm also reaching out to Colette right now to triple check that Beacon would be an allowable thing. I know that we're not really able to fund school districts directly, and so I'm working to understand if the foundation as a pass-through would be appropriate.
It's not a funnel, it's not a pass-through, it's a fiscal agent.
Thank you. Fiscal agent.
It's good.
It's an important clarification.
Melissa, you were gonna say something? Okay.
Oh, I want to add one more thing on the subject of Melissa's recommendations. These funds can absolutely be used for our department. Many counties use them to fund staff for their economic development departments. So, funding certain priorities within the county echelon is that's not a question to me. That's definitely allowable.
Okay.
With that being said, I guess one more final punch with that. I love the idea for a low amount of money with a project that has a beginning and an end, with an outcome of potentially offering the bulk of our community health insurance, 401k, or benefits just by phone calls and project management and marketing and advertising. I really like that. If the EDD can be a recipient of funds.
Can I ask you a question on that one?
Yeah.
So who pays for it? Like who gives the money to the 401k or insurance if it's not coming from?
So it's not matching, right? It's the administration and the setup. And that's where the cost comes into play.
But who does the actual payment?
So the state of Utah has already negotiated that through the visitor and tourism for visiting and tourism companies, right? Or the Park City Chamber has already negotiated those through vendors and providers. So it would be connecting those dots so that we can piggyback on the work that those folks have done and be able to put those same programs in place.
But the state has funding for this, or the chamber was funding it, or I still don't understand where the money comes from to go to the 401k, for example.
So the
in Park City, for example.
So in Park City, for example,
Yeah.
they've already negotiated all of those rates with the companies, and they've done the administration and the paperwork to be able to offer and pay for that.
But who's paying for it? I'm sorry, I just.
The Park City Chamber paid for
Let
theirs.
me try.
Yeah, sorry,
I
okay.
I have this problem every
Okay.
day, I mean, not every day, but in my business. There's two costs to setting up 401k for your employees. One is the management time of negotiating it, which is non-trivial.
Sure.
And the second part is the matching. So this program has no matching. So the
You're
business
just setting it
doesn't
up
have
for
a cost.
individual.
And the negotiating has already been done, so there's no management cost. So it's like a program that you sign up for. It's like a,
You're just setting up so the employee can contribute.
yes, you just slide
Thank you
sideways
for
into
that.
this. You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
So,
I'm
no,
sorry, I
and this
just
is
didn't
all
know
you're
what
totally
about
right.
that. I
No,
just
and I
didn't understand
appreciate
about
that. And like a couple of different examples are, for example, business A may decide, hey, we're profitable, we have additional, we would like to
Yeah, they
contribute to
could
match it.
too. Totally.
And they'll give that, right? Company B may say, we are not in the position to do that,
At least you
but
can
we
set it
want to
up
be able to
for
offer it as a benefit. And now both employees, whether matched or not matched, are the proud new owners of a 401k.
Yeah, and both problems are why small businesses don't do it. We don't have time to
Thank you.
figure it
I'm
out,
sorry.
and we don't have time to manage it.
Is
Yeah.
it the same for the health insurance?
Health insurance, same thing. So they negotiate the rates for the employee. So the employee gets to pay, they get all the benefits and the advantages of every one of those people that are participating in the
group.
pool. Exactly. But the small business owner would never be able to negotiate that on their behalf. because they don't have that collective buying power. So being able to tap into, and again, like Ashley was saying, to your point, the first part of it, that's the non-trivial part, is doing all the research, all the paperwork, all the phone calls, all the negotiation. And with a portion of that grant, right, you could say, we're gonna get someone to sit in that seat that's a benefits expert or whatever, and do all that for us. And then we're gonna market it, do summits for the businesses, make sure that every business in our community knows that they can offer all of these benefits and packages to their employees at no cost.
And the health insurance thing is also really hard because you want, even if you were gonna take a portion of someone's salary and pay for health insurance with it, you're not supposed to do that because that money's supposed to go through their payroll. And so these are serious, these are real answers to real problems that the businesses have that could be a great benefit. I just wonder, is there any way, while we're deep into this one, why?
Sorry.
That's all right. Is there any way why do we need $63,000 to do this? I guess is what, 65 or whatever it is. If we pay that, or we're just paying for more staff time for I mean, could the chamber be the facilitator to get this out there for a small amount of money? I don't know.
Two things on the money side.
Okay.
So, and this is just my thinking, but two things on the money side. Number one, like what you were saying earlier, this is outside the ordinary course of business that anyone has budgeted for time, resource, whatever in departments. So in an effort to get it done, they would be able to hire, contract, work with. And then the second piece of that is the communication piece. How does every business in the community know that that's available?
Expensive money to get it.
And they have some questions, being able to get that out via social media, being able to host some courses, some training, and get, whatever groups that they feel like they need to work with. That's what the budget funding would be.
And we don't have economic development, it's not a budgeted item really in Grand County, so it's the tourist, it's the Grand County economic development, but it's paid for by TRT, and economic development is not funded by TRT. So at this time, there's a small amount of money carved out for the things that happen in the economic development department, but it's not that's going to be paid out of the general fund, but it's not really there. So if we did ever decide to give money to economic development to increase, and I don't know how much time they have, so whether they have to hire new staff, or Ben says, oh, I can carve out more time to do that, then that, because somebody else in the department can do the travel stuff that he does.
Yeah.
So, I don't think it's a bad idea. I would like to see more money carved out from the county, but I wasn't in budget talks because I inherited a budget. I would like to see more money carved out in our community for economic development, actual pay. But, so I don't think that's a bad idea, but.
And just trickling down a little bit more since I opened it, and I do apologize, it wasn't my intention to go that deep, but the benefits that I see from it is the biggest feedback that I've heard from the business community, and this was on behalf of the chamber and some of those conversations, is I'm having a hard time staffing. I'm having a hard time keeping employees. We're having a hard time with the workforce. In the Trail to Tomorrow report, one big chunk of feedback was we're underperforming against 11 comparable counties in terms of financial stability, security, housing security, all of those things. So I feel like you get the double whammy of saying, number one, we're going to create more economic prosperity by making sure that we're offering these benefits like planning for retirement and being able to help with some of these things, right? Because now I have a financial asset in the form of a 401k that I have access to. The other part of it is for staffing, retention, and workforce. And then also, it's a good PR story. I love the PR upside of us to be able to say, Moab is a leading gateway outdoor recreation community. We offer all of our businesses. You talk about a place where you want to come and start a business, own a business, buy a business, bring a business. We offer all of our business community the opportunity to offer benefits and the full suite of benefits.
Yeah.
So I just want to jump in and just say, I love this idea. And I think there's just a little more groundwork that needs to happen before we're ready to put it together a budget and fund it. this is something we should definitely consider for the next funding cycle. That'd be my opinion. I want to hear from the Park City Chamber, how much does it cost to do this? Who needs to be the staffer that does it? Or something like that before we know what it looks like even to really fund something like this. So my own take is just given where we're at time-wise with this current grant cycle, I think those two projects that we talked about, that Jasmine talked about.
But I don't think
are
they have
shovel-ready.
a budget either. And I'm not saying that that's not a reason to give that to them, because for me right now, the Beacon program is top of the pile. What I'm saying is every single project that we're considering, from MOB community childcare to the Beacon program, is gonna have to do the work in the next 24-ish hours.
And I think
to put a
those
budget
two organizations are, community childcare and the Beacon program, are able to put together budgets in the timeframe that we are asking because of where they're at with these types of projects. Whereas I think something else would require work that will take more than a day or two to put together a budget.
Well, I also just think that our economic development office is swimming in projects. I mean, they have a lot going on. And so it's just, that is another kind of reason. I really believe in this, and I think it's really important, because I think part of what the chamber's trying to do is, we live in one of the most beautiful places in the planet. We should make the economy work for all our employees. We can do it. And so this is a piece of that I think could be really, really important. Yeah, the part that is a mystery to me is a little bit how the state feels about these things, whether we're going to trigger some problem. And I just kind of want to do this one as smoothly as possible and then get busy, because our next grant cycle is coming right up, isn't it?
I agree.
And so get busy with really solid projects that they know what the reporting is going to be. It's not, it's just I think these grants are really amazing, but also kind of have these unintended consequences that we need to plan for and avoid, and make sure it's more linear how the organization is going to go get through it, kind of thing.
You
I'm
notice,
curious.
I'm sorry, Christian, go ahead.
With this project, is it a one-time cost, the administration cost to get it all set up and then the marketing costs? Or is there an annual associated cost to keep administrating the program, keep enrolling businesses, keep marketing it? So would there be every year, would there have to be additional funding to keep the program?
The reason why it was on my list is because I kind of feel like the overarching goal or intention of grants is to create infrastructure that otherwise wouldn't be created because of cost, with no intention of an ongoing programmatic expense. Meaning, listen, we can figure out a way how to make sure if something's a valuable program, how to monetize that and keep it continuing. But what we can't do is pay for the initial investment that's going to get that infrastructure built, or get that program launched, or get that out into the community. So whether or not it's a good idea for this cycle or whatever, the overarching intention would be to take a grant to establish the program, package it up, get it out to the community and get it started. But I don't think it's appropriate for a grant in terms of ongoing administration of a program.
No, but hopefully once you did all that work, it would be pretty rote. Like, that would be the hope.
It's set up.
Yeah.
and moving.
Yeah.
Or even the city and the county could collaborate to pay that small administrative fee that maybe going forward, but I think her idea was to get somebody out there to do the work to bring it forward.
To get it going.
And I love what you just said, because I am looking for any opportunity or project today, tomorrow, or a year from now that can start one small collaboration between the city and the county, so that we can start having some substantive economic development conversations, because we're interdependent with very little collaboration or overlap.
Well, that would be another reason to put this into the next cycle, just because then we can have those conversations with the city and the county. I just feel like we've been doing these grants with this, woohoo, here you go. And we're not necessarily looking at the tail end of the grant, or looking at the next phase or how it's building, And so maybe this gives us the chance to create something really powerful, set it up so that there is the money to make it start, and that we know and get an MOU between the city and the county on this topic as part of our grant application. Like, we have, this money is not just a one-time shot, it's a plan, and it's going to go to the future, something like that, where we do a little more work to get it really solid. It's just one idea.
So Mark and Melody and Sarah, Christian, this is an example of the fact that not only does the staff have swimming in ideas, but so is this board. And we've struggled pretty much for the last couple of years to actually get ahead and do the kind of thinking that Chris and Melissa talk about. And I think that we've made a lot of progress in surfacing ideas, identifying the target areas that we want to put the relatively modest amount of grant monies toward that are going to have the immediate impact for organizations. Ben left the room because he got some bad news, and that is that there's no K-12 programs, regardless of how funded through the Rural County Grant Program. So that means that Beacon, Science, Moab, and Mentoring do not qualify for this.
Thank you for getting that news so promptly.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm deeply embarrassed. I didn't know it before, so I apologize for wasting our time.
Don't apologize.
It's okay, because it brings it forward, because she has a million ideas for fundraising, so we're gonna still help.
Exactly, and
I
that's
want to put a pen, I'm sorry, but I just, programs like that, they got me.
so, that's the fun of this group, and that's why this group is so important to support the department and the partners that it works with. That said, I'd entertain a motion to allocate the 65.3 to Moab Community Childcare.
I have one other question
Sure.
for Corey, if possible.
Yeah.
I wonder if the city were to be awarded that appropriation, would they be able to spend those funds within the designated timeframe?
And this is in regards to dispersed parking project?
Yes.
I know Corey said he might have to jump, but he'd be back. Corey, are you still with us? So it's a good question. Hopefully Corey will come back in a few moments. If we don't get an answer from him, like I said, this letter will be composed of prioritized list of expenditures. So the board can determine if that is priority and how it's weighted.
May I ask a question that may be process appropriate or inappropriate, so I am asking for that feedback. Along those lines, if we were to award the grant to the city for the dispersed parking, is there a possibility to add something onto that for at least whatever portion that this would be allocated to or added to the budget of, that it were done in some sort of collaboration or work between someone from the county and someone from the city? For example, administrators or planners, or no?
I think that's a hard one, because
I think we just got Corey back, so maybe he can be asked directly. Corey, are you there? We just started talking about the city, and Mark and then Melissa have questions for you if you're here.
Yes, thank you. Sorry about that. Goats got out. Cassie Valley problems. Goats got out. But yes, back. Thank you.
Corey, I just had the question, if the city were to be awarded this 63.5, could they expend, for the parking project, could they expend those funds within the time frame prior to June 1?
July 1.
July 1.
Give or take.
Yes, the project's near completion. I've been chatting with Mark and Alexi. So Mark Joel, Saint City Engineer, and then Alexi, Strategic Initiatives for the city. They've been communicating with the admin about this piece. I was able to pull numbers from them during this meeting. Essentially, what we've specific to the city funded allocations, that we would not be able to add any new scope of project, but would be able to incorporate those funds into the existing extensions that we've committed to. So I've been chatting back and forth with Ben on this a little bit. So that's essentially where we're at, is that we believe we could utilize those funds by the time frame, but they'd be enveloped into the existing project.
Mark, can I ask Corey, sorry.
Sure.
Can I ask a follow-up clarifying question? when you say incorporate into, but not extend the scope of, what would that $65,000 replace? Meaning, I assume that your budget, your project is already fully funded. You're already gonna complete it within the time. You didn't have a $65,000 shortfall to start with. So what would you then do with that $65,000?
Yes, that's my understanding right now, is that we are funded adequately. I'm looking to our city engineer, who's been working on trying to pull the shortfalls or gaps within that, because we have had change orders in the project, replacement orders within the project. There's been a number, and you've probably all have seen that, a number of things within that extended scope, and that's really what the city's committed to as far as its additional allocations beyond the grant, which was mostly in the realm of amenities, landscaping, additional features beyond the hard improvements. And that's where I believe we'd find those gaps, and we'd be allocating those funds to the additional extensions that the city's already going to be paying for out of general fund, is my understanding.
That's what I would love clarification on, Corey, is
Yeah.
Are there gaps? Are there shortfalls? And if so, then to what extent? Like, what's the financial burden of those shortfalls and gaps?
Sure.
And then if there aren't any shortfalls or gaps, what would the city then do with that $65,000 that was allocated to the budget for the original scope of the project?
Sure.
Because that would be like a different decision-making point for me.
Absolutely.
I was under the impression that when the city imposed the property tax this year, part of that property tax was including the shortfall from the dispersed parking. So ultimately, if that money was passed on to the city, then that would just help it would help relieve the tax burden on the city taxpayers that have that property tax. I mean, it's a big, long tax. They have lots of things for it. I mean, it's a small amount of money in the amount of money that they're putting forth for their property tax and all of the different projects. But I know that property tax was to help pay for the part of dispersed parking that wasn't covered.
Ooh, the optics on this are strange. I mean,
Just so you know, that was actually the direct recommendation of the governor's office in the call that we were on. Is this was one of the projects that they specifically outlined. Wasn't it Colette Cox that said, give it to the city for more planters in dispersed parking? So I know that it's not only acceptable, but has been suggested by the governor's office. That doesn't mean that I agree with it. I am absolutely not like carrying the message for, I'm just saying, I know that it's okay because I heard it out of the mouth of the person over the granting and also from Colette, and
That's why we put it on the agenda,
Yeah.
just to make sure that we did consider it.
Chris?
so
I'd like to make a motion
Chris is gonna make a motion.
that we recommend to the commission moving the funding to Moab Community Childcare in order to expand the scope of their infrastructure project. And that, if we're making a secondary recommendation, the city would be second on that list. But that we have a preference, a clear preference for Moab Community Childcare. And the reason, that's the motion, and the reason I suggest that is because I think that's the way we can make something new happen that wasn't going to happen in Grand County otherwise. We were going to get more assets for our community that we desperately need in an area that we all have, worked on, and we know we have a strong partner and track record behind.
Is there a second? Thanks, Jasmine. Final comments?
I had one question, and I apologize if this opens up an entirely new vein. I was wondering, Christian, if you could elaborate just a bit on USU Moab's future in providing housing for students. And I was wondering what the university is undertaking in the near future, whether it's feasibility study or what have you, to understand if that's going to be like a near-term offering.
Yeah, really short answer is no, it won't be near term. As many of you know, that many people in the community have wanted Moab to be a destination campus, but all the university presidents up until the most recent president have said no. I approached the most recent president and tried to make the most compelling argument that I could to allow us to pursue housing, and she agreed. So that is exciting. She's put some serious limitations on us in that we cannot borrow or bond. We cannot approach the legislature for the funding. And so we're in discussions with a lot of folks right now in the area, across the state, to look for opportunities, but it is going to take a little while to figure it out.
Okay.
Yeah. Good question.
Yeah, the only fleeting thought I had was if this board wanted to consider providing some sort of pre-development costs or something, but I don't even know. It sounds like you're probably not even there.
Yeah, we're not even close to looking at that.
Sure.
Yeah, in the future, as we kind of narrow things down and get it more, this is really recent, within the last month that we've been given this permission to pursue this idea. So we're just so fresh that we're not ready to move forward in that fashion.
I figure, I just thought I'd ask. Yep,
Yeah,
keep
no,
us
thanks.
updated. Thank you. It's an exciting
Amazing news, though,
development.
because I served on that council and we weren't getting that answer for a really long time, so good job.
Well, the new president has a little bit different approach to things, and the timing just, I'd like to claim that it was my persuasive, but
Just take it.
we
Thank
just
you.
have a president that has a really kind of new vision for the institution.
Well, let us know when she's come down.
Will do. Yeah, she's pretty amazing.
With this motion on the table, I wonder if, Chris, could you just elaborate just a little bit more from my notes, and so I know what I need to coordinate on with Rob and anyone else at the table, what we're expecting from this increased proposal of funding. Are we looking for MCC? Do we want them to propose, submit a revised scope that expands on what they intend to do based on the new number, or?
Well, I think what we heard from Rob, and based on even the original application from Community Childcare, I don't remember the exact numbers from the original application, but it was somewhere in that range of, that's what was given. But what was proposed or asked for originally was somewhere in the range of like 135,000 just for building cost. And we actually cut that back because we wanted to fund other things. And so I would just say that, I think that based on what Rob said today and previous information that's been given to this body, we know that Community Childcare can dedicate additional funding to this infrastructure project. And I think that's what I would suggest that we do.
So if you're
Thank you.
still in suggestion mode, not in motion mode, I would like to say.
Well, we can revise it if there's another
Prior-
way to make it,
No.
but we can always revise it.
I guess just for consideration, I would suggest the reverse of that, which is I'm concerned about the feedback at several levels with continuing to fund Moab area childcare. So if we want to talk about, so as far as supporting Rob and supporting the organization, I couldn't be more supportive in terms of providing additional funding. This for me goes back to the USU and funding the position that we had already funded in terms of the context of all of those conversations. And I feel like with the feedback from GOEO about the Moab dispersed parking arrangement, I would be really curious to get some answers from Corey about, what the budget is and what they would do. So if we need more information from the both of them over the next few days, that would be really helpful. But in the absence of that information, I myself would flip-flop those almost.
So let me just respond to that, but you can go ahead.
Well, sorry, I thought we had to make a decision. Do we get to say
We can make a
first choice,
decision.
second choice?
To the commission, because we're making a recommendation to the commission.
Right.
So we can
got
say
it.
first choice, second choice to the commission, and the commission will make that.
Got it,
final
thanks for that.
Can we just
So-
submit choices to the commission
Oh,
and ask
Lord.
for feedback on that?
Then we're not really doing
Okay.
our job.
Okay.
So-
We're gonna have 3 hours of
My-
conversation.
I
about
know, exactly. We can't do that to them.
So Melissa, I definitely have heard, from the state that there's some concern about what our funding to community childcare becoming just ongoing support for operations rather than steps that take them to financial sustainability. And that's why I think that focusing on the infrastructure piece is the really key piece of, if we're going to give them more money, that's a concrete one-time build that we're talking about funding rather than sort of staff support or something like that. And I think that that's the kind of thing that they can get behind. And so that's my sort of response to that. I mean, I think that this is just the kind of thing as like a final send off of funding to community childcare that we can get the state to get behind.
Ben, do you have any administrative feedback on that, or Forrest, you as well?
You know, I want to submit something that will be accepted, and so we can move this program along as quickly as possible.
I'm asking.
Yeah, I'm kind of right down the middle with what the two of you are saying. I mean, on the one hand, we have the governor's office has expressed that they would like to see funding diversity in the future. They are not singling out Moab community childcare. They just don't want to see anyone receive funding for too many rounds. So our understanding is that this is going to probably be the last round for Moab community childcare, unless we do some sort of sub-grantable program and we do little chunks in the future. That's a future discussion. On the other hand, while I understand that concern, at the same time, they have expressed great support for Moab community childcare in the past. This is something that we have on record as receiving before. We know they're excited about it. And when we talk about what Chris is saying about, you know, a more one-time investment, I mean, we've obviously learned that this grant has nuance to it, but the three bullets that the grant does call out is infrastructure, workforce development, and business recruitment. This is absolutely infrastructure is what we're talking about here. So I don't have any concerns about putting this application up and defending it. I think it's a great application. The concerns from GOEO are taken, and you know, I think in the future funding rounds, MCC is going to bow out and we'll have other opportunities. And I also think they probably understand that, you know, we're just in a bit of a bind right now.
So Chris, that's not inconsistent with what you said.
Yeah, and I think that we need to go that direction too. Partly the optics on the city piece are kind of weird to the public, I feel, because the city did raise their taxes, and it just feels like a funny move for this board to be doing that. Maybe I'm wrong, but all these other ideas we need to not pause on, but in our next meeting, make sure we are really taking the steps so that when we get to our next grant cycle, we're totally prepared and can do that. And so I think we have an obligation to make a choice to the commission. And so I think we should just vote for one thing. And the way it's sounding to me at this point, it seems like supporting MCC is the most straightforward, easiest way to move on. And then as we look at these other opportunities, we can do a better job preparing for them, to vote on them and knowing more going forward.
Or splitting it right in half and doing both. I mean, and then when you make your recommendation, you know, then if you want them both on there, then they're both there and in the same equal spot. You know, you make a recommendation of half the money to go to the city, and you make the recommendation for the other half to go to Moab community childcare.
Do you mean half of the remaining or half of the entire?
Half the remaining, the
Okay.
65.
The 63.5.
35, yeah, 63.5. Just the remaining.
Sure.
You know, you keep it, yeah, the original grant in place, but that part of it to the chamber, just a way to, you know, if you guys just throwing it out there, option.
So we have a motion on the table, and it's been seconded, and that is to fund, to redeploy the 63.5 to Moab Community Childcare. Did I capture that?
Yeah, to make that the top recommendation.
To make that the top
With the
recommendation.
city as a secondary
Okay,
recommendation.
so to be clear in my head, it's going to be a recommendation to allocate the 63.5 to Moab Community Childcare as our top priority, and a project share with the city of Moab as the second priority. Is that the,
And with
that's
the
the intent?
letter include, we kind of expect this to be our last grant to MCC.
Yes, it will include that. The governor's office is aware of that, and we'll make that clear to the commission.
I think that's important.
And to his credit, but unsurprisingly, Rob is already thinking about the future with the organization. So he may not appear before this board asking for money. He may return to the board at some point in time. So I'm going to call the question then, and I'll start with Jasmine. So you heard the motion?
I'm in favor.
Thank you. And thank you for your comments about both MCC and the Beacon program. Mark?
Yes, I'm fine with that.
Okay. And Ashley?
Me too.
Okay. And Chris?
Yes.
And Melissa? And Forrest? That makes it unanimous. So thank you for your patience today. This has been, as always, a very fertile conversation for more work to do. And Mark and Melody and Sarah, one of the things that this group has done over the last 3 or 4 months is started to work on how this group can embrace and start activating some of the recommendations from the Trail to Tomorrow strategic plan. Melody attended one of those work sessions, and so this is, and Melissa is always there to remind us about the need to be thinking forward. So I think this is a great start for 2025, and we'll have to keep it going tomorrow afternoon.
Thank you all
Thanks,
very much for
Jasmine.
your time.
Yeah, thanks. This is such a cool idea, the 401k and insurance.
I think all